what's the problem with this image?
Too dark.
Too dark.
Absolutely.
Not much
Absolutely.
detail in the shadows.
Yeah, no detail.
Yes.
Right.
So how do we bring
much
some of
haze.
that out? If it's there, how do we bring it out?
Well, I would go to Camera Raw,
Camera raw.
start with dehaze.
Yeah, dehaze.
I would start with clicking the auto button.
Okay. Let me say that in Adobe Camera Raw,
I would use a gradient tool for the bottom right in the triangle and get rid of that, lighten up the foreground first.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would hit the easiest way to do it would be to hit the auto tone and camera raw.
Here, here.
hit the what?
Hit the auto button. I'm not kidding.
Why?
Pull the
Up at
shadows
the
up
top is
first.
an auto button,
Shy. Don't
right
be
here next to black and white.
Why don't you just use the slider for shadows? Oh, there you go.
Shadows
there you
and blacks.
There's auto. There's
hot.
auto. That was
Yeah.
very good. You notice where it is? It's at the top of the
Auto worked
Adobe
good.
Camera Raw.
John, where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay.
That worked well.
That worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other is come down to shadows and move the shadows to the right so that you are affecting only the shadow areas. You notice the highlight here. So we go to the highlight slider and move it to the left just a
And
little
bring it
bit.
down.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can do some combinations. Let me take this back where it was. Take this one back. Click on the auto. And then you can still come down. You see what it did. It adjusted the highlights. It adjusted the shadow. It even adjusted whites and the black a little bit, which is really very good.
Mm-hmm.
Also did the vibrance.
Also, the
John, why didn't it dehaze it at all? It looks like it needs a little dehazing.
well, let's do that. It really does make a difference, doesn't it? Look at that sky.
Whoa.
Oh, that's good.
Well, that's what I meant, John. Obviously, you have to hit auto first. I forgot one
Yes,
step, and
right,
then
That's right.
I personally would
And
go
then
first
tweak.
to dehaze before I do shadows
Yeah.
and lights, etc.
Yes, it's almost the first slider I touch also.
Right, that's what I learned from you, sir.
Which
There's
is that I didn't
another
hear.
aspect. There's another aspect or feature of curves that is very nice now. That if you put your cursor in the image and move it, that isn't doing it. Hold on. Let me see how to do this. No, that's not what I want. I'll have to come back to it.
I didn't see you move, Kurt.
Oh, I got it. Here is the targeted adjustment tool for the
Okay.
curves. And when I click on that and come in here, if I want to lighten this, I hold the
Mm-hmm.
left mouse button down and raise it up, and it actually changes the curve automatically for me. I can do it in the sky and take it down. So now I'm adjusting the color of the sky. So you don't need to learn so much about what point to put onto the curve. You can just put it into the image and adjust it directly from there.
John, will you show me again where you accessed that?
Show me you what?
Where you accessed that to the targeted part of that? And how you got the little crosshairs on
Let me
first?
show you the curves. Here's
Okay.
the curves.
Got it?
And over here on the right-hand side of the top, you see the red, green, blue.
Yeah.
This is a targeted adjustment.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
So you just put that where you want to change your curve then?
Yes, and you can move it up or down, however you want to do it.
Oh my gosh.
But I think for this image, the best was clicking on that auto.
Yes.
That was really good. And then adjusting some of these other, which, for example, the dehaze. Look at what that dehaze did. Look.
Mm-hmm.
So very simple, and this is not a great image. I wanted it here as a good example of how's something so dark and what do you do with it?
Right.
Hello.
Somebody didn't like that one.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know what that was. I shoot in JPEG, but in Photoshop you can open as RAW. Would you suggest doing that so I can do the techniques you're showing?
I think you should always, well, let me answer the question before I answer it the way I was about to answer it. It always depends on what you want to do as an end result for the images. If you want to make prints, a high quality print, you should be shooting in RAW and then bringing it into Photoshop to do changes and into Adobe Camera Raw to do some of the things we've done, because it has the most number of pixels when you're bringing it in as a RAW file. And when you're finished with that, you should save it as either a PSD or a TIFF file, because it will save everything that you've done. If you save it as a JPEG, it will compress it. You're losing pixels. So that's why I asked the question, what do you want as a result? If you want to just show things on the web or transfer something for somebody, just show it to them, JPEG's fine. But if you want to make a print, you really don't want to be making it from a JPEG. And then every time if you have a JPEG, every time you bring it into Photoshop and do something, it compresses it again. So you're losing pixels. Okay, here's this image. Come back to this. Go to opening. Click on this image and it's taking it directly into Adobe Camera Raw. So based on what we learned previous image, where would we go first? Let's go up and click on auto and see what it does. Well, that's a little bit too bright for me, but it brought out all the details. So if you come down and readjust the highlights, readjust the whites a little bit more, bring those down, and contrast, maybe bring up the contrast a little bit. So it was very easy to do something with this image. I will come down to the bottom and open it. Now, enough of you have heard me talking many
You didn't use any dehaze. Why not in this case?
Well, because there's nothing really to dehaze in here. Let's take it back in and do it and see what that will do with it.
I don't know if it's worth pointing out, John, but you to point out the difference between once you've already gone into Photoshop and you go back into Camera Raw, it's not really the same as when you were initially in Camera Raw. I don't know. Talk about that.
Well, you're starting over. It doesn't, well, wait a minute. When you are in Camera Raw, and if it came in directly, it saves the steps that you've done. If you go to Camera Raw from Photoshop, it does not.
Well, it's also a factor that you've now rasterized it once it's hit Photoshop.
That's true, but that's very minor changes to it. Okay, we'll have this image. Anyone who knows me knows that I would do something directly to this image, the way it is.
You will flip the,
I would flip it, no doubt, because it's pushing you off the lower right portion of the image. If we flip it horizontally, now it reads so much better, and these trees on the right holds the viewer from going off the right side. Let's look at that again. See your eyes coming in from the left, you come down through the stream and it takes you right out. Now you really see this flow of water a lot better, and these trees accent the whole scene. That's all I wanted to show in this image, as well as bringing things together. We could do some burning in various areas and dodging, but the first aspect is reading something left to right.
Right.
Let's do this one next.
Ooh.
This is not mine. This is Maurice Merton. I'm on a website called YouPic, youpic.com. Lots of photographers on there. It's free. You can go and look at all kinds of images. Gives you great ideas about composition, all kinds of things. It's free.
What
Just
was the website again, please?
say it again.
What was the website again?
YouPic, youpic.com. YOUP is in Paul, IC.com. In fact,
But
maybe I'll go there in a minute. So let's look at this for a minute. And what would you do to this to make it more interesting? And Jürgen, I'm going to ask you first.
Well, you have a lot of white. I would definitely darken the front more, and also the background, because my view is right into the middle of the picture.
Yes. Well, let's take it into Adobe Camera Raw first.
Okay.
And use dehaze.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Look at the difference of just that one slider.
Right.
Look at that. Here to here. Now, what you were saying, Jürgen, and what works so well is this darker area on the right keeps the eye from falling off that side. See, when it's lighter like this, you
Right.
come over here, but you may even tend to wander off. But this pushes you back in. The sky is much better that way. We could even go back into Adobe Camera Raw. Come down to Color Mixer, click on the Targeted Adjustment tool, click on Luminance, and up in the sky, just darken the sky. So
Yeah.
Beautiful.
very simple changes. Now, what else could we do to emphasize how to bring the eye in there? A little bit of change in highlights and shadows, a little bit. Give me some recommendations.
I would make a highlight from the bottom left corner, or not from the corner, but like a path, like a light path.
On the path or on the wall?
Oh, on the ground, on the path.
Here.
Oh, just enough to make you think to go that way.
I understand. Just a minute. Just want to make sure I have the right tool here. And you notice I'm doing it a number of times, building up again. I'm not trying to do it all in one shot. That way I get to see how much I really want it to be there and where do I want it to be. I think also, then in combination with that, the wall is leading you down in there also. So if we lighten up that area a little bit more to bring your eye in there, let's see what that did. Here's your first part down in here.
Yes, it wakes it up, makes me want to go over there.
Yes, and now we do the wall.
Would you, John, would you darken the left part of the wall, maybe to push you in a little bit?
Yes, good one. Yes. So by darkening this a little bit, it emphasizes that whole aspect of bring the eye in. Absolutely. And even
John, I would darken especially the top part, which is already darker, because if you're going to look at a picture, you start at top left and go through it. So I think that would bring you to the beginning.
yes, good. Notice I'm doing this upper right because there was a highlight up here in the upper right. So get that out.
Mm-hmm.
Good comments. How about a little bit in the center here somewhere? Now, unfortunately, this image has a blown out section here. Not my image. Would not want it to be that way, and there's nothing we can do about it because there are no pixels in it. But that's a problem for this image. But I thought the overall composition was very interesting for this. I'll darken this a little bit more. In fact, thinking of darkening like this, some of these things, I recommend that you do this, save it, wait a couple days, and go back and look at it again. And that certainly you want to save it as a TIFF or a PSD. So if you've done any layers or anything, all those come back in. But let's look at how much more three-dimensional this is from that. And
Wow.
a key aspect about presenting an image is to make it three-dimensional, not just because there are lines that here's a foreground, here's a middle ground, here's a background. Emphasize those in some way. We did this very simply with some dodge and burn and dehaze. That's all we did to this image. And look at the impact of this from the open to where we are. And you had some very good suggestions.
Oh, there's no pixels. It's brilliant out. Yeah.
John, do you ever send your correct quote, your changed version back to the original photographer?
Ooh,
Yes, I do.